Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to do a little January reading wrap up. I'm going to talk to you about the 4 books I read in January, give you a quick synopsis and tell you exactly what I thought of them. So without further ado, grab your beverage of choice and let's get into it. Quick disclaimer, there seems to be some sort of storm going on outside, so if you can hear it, then I apologise. Or not, because I actually kind of like hearing wind and rain, so I can hear it, it's pretty loud, and that's saying something because I actually have an ear infection right now, so I can't hear out of my left ear, and there's also a nice high pitched ringing, which has been going on for just over a week now. The struggle has been real, let me just tell you, the struggle has been real. I have eardrops and like a nasal spray from the doctor. I need y'all to send me good vibes. Because I would not wish this upon anyone. I would not wish this upon my worst enemy. Anyway, I digress. Let's just get into it. So, January started off a little bit rough for me, reading wise. I read a book that I have given 1 star, and I can't remember the last time I gave a book 1 star, honestly. And that book was The Last Word by Taylor Adams. Now, I feel like if you've been on Book Talk, you're gonna have heard of this book. I feel like a lot of people were recommending it. I think that's how I found it. Or, no, yeah, I think I did see it on Book Talk, and then I think I actually saw a booktuber talking about it. And I've been into like thrillers for a long time, and I've been getting into like horror books as well, and this seemed to be a kind of mix match of those things. So, really quick synopsis: our main character Emma is isolating herself. She is house sitting for this gorgeous house on this beach. There's not really anyone else around except from one neighbour kind of across the way. So she's very isolated, and that is on purpose because Emma has recently suffered a great personal tragedy, which we don't get to know too much about until further on in the book. So Emma is isolating herself, and all she's doing throughout the day is reading some shitty ebooks, horror ebooks on her Kindle. I don't actually know if it's specified. I think it's just e-reader. Okay, Kindle, whatever. She's reading some ebooks and drinking tea and walking her dog Laika on the beach. That is basically her life. She doesn't really see anyone. She is, as I said, purposely isolating herself. She even gets her shopping delivered, so she doesn't have to go out and do that. So yeah, she's living a very, very solitary existence. And one day Emma reads this book that actually it was her neighbour across the way that recommended it to her. They speak to each other via these like drawing kind of pad things, I think, or whiteboards maybe. I actually can't remember. Anyway, they don't physically like interact, but they see each other through the window, and that's how they communicate, and they like write messages for each other. So anyway, he recommends this book to her. She reads this book and she thinks it's terrible, and she leaves a bad review on Amazon, just basically, yeah, saying how terrible she thinks this book is. And the author actually replies requesting that she take her 1 star review down. They have a back and forth. Emma refuses to take the 1 star review down. And then some really strange things start happening within the house, and it seems like there's someone watching Emma and maybe seeking revenge. So, I know probably the way I've described that to you sounds pretty interesting. I know that when I heard that recommended, like when I heard this book recommended and what it was about, I was like certainly intrigued. I thought that sounded like a great premise, and it is, in my opinion, a great premise. It was a great premise, but I would say, in my opinion, it was very poorly executed. I just felt like this book, it was like reading a really bad slasher film. And I'm going to say right now, perhaps that was deliberate, okay? And maybe if you're super into like slashers and kind of like gore and things like that, maybe you'll really like this book. I personally am not, and personally, if I do watch a kind of slasher film, I appreciate the medium of watching it, because when you watch a film like that, you can kind of laugh at like some of the shots and like, oh, how is he still, like Michael Myers, like, oh, he's still alive, oh, he's coming back, you know, it's kind of funny, whatever. When it's in a book form, for me, just doesn't work. And that's a personal opinion, that's a personal taste, I admit that. I just felt like it didn't work. However, I will say the actual slasher portion of the book was like over 100 pages, I think. It was far too long, far too drawn out. It just became so unrealistic to the point where it was just ridiculous for me. And I get it. You know, with horror, thriller, crime books, you do have to suspend your disbelief, like with any book. But there's only so far for me. It gets to a point where I was literally reading this and rolling my eyes because I was like, is this for real? Like, is this actually meant to be a comedy? I actually thought at one point it was meant to be like farcical. But then there's also these really serious undertones to this book of like mental health, suicide ideation, also a lot of kind of incel themes with a stalker. There's obviously themes of stalking. So there's actually quite a lot of serious themes in this book. And in my opinion, too serious for it to have been intended to be like a farce or a comedy or a spoof. I don't know. Wasn't for me. 1 star. Let's move on. Okay, so the next book I read was actually a little novella, and it was called This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marceau. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but yeah, it's a little horror novella. So in this book, our main character, Miller, is approaching her wedding, and she's trying to heal a very, very dysfunctional relationship with her narcissistic mother. So obviously right there are themes of narcissistic abuse, you know, a narcissistic parent. If you have dealt with any of that and have like a narcissistic parent, trigger warning, I guess. Really, really great premise. I don't want to say too much because it's a novella, so I feel like anything I say is really just going to give it away because obviously it's quite short. I gave it 3 stars. I would recommend it. I thought it was a really great premise. It did genuinely creep me out. I docked a couple of stars because because again I felt like it did stray into the realm of just a little bit too unrealistic. Like for me, I would have just noped out of that situation instantly. I think the very brief premise is that she's trying to heal this relationship with her mother, and her mother decides, let's go a trip to this cabin that I've bought, and this like isolated cabin. Both the books that I read at the start of this year were all about isolation. I was feeling very lonely at the start of this month. But yeah, so they go up to this cabin, and anyway, just everything that unfolds like right from the start, I was just like, nah, it's a no from me. But I understand, like I do kind of get in the flip side, obviously. Miller's parent is a narcissist. Her mum, Sylvie, I think the mum's name is a narcissist. So she has always manipulated Miller to make her feel bad about things, to make her feel guilt about the fact that they don't have a great relationship, or that they don't, they aren't involved in each other's lives that much, blah, 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 blah. So I kind of get it. The other reason I docked it a star was because for me, again, this is probably a personal thing. I'm an actor, so I think dialogue is very important to me, and I do put a lot of emphasis on it. And I really can't stand when a book, especially a book that is written present tense, I can't stand it when the dialogue just isn't realistic. Like when I read a bit of dialogue and I'm like, no one in their life has ever said that out loud. No one would ever say that. It's just not a realistic way that someone would talk. That really bothers me. And I think that's quite a specific niche thing for me because I'm an actor. So yeah, I take that. But it just really annoyed me. There were so many times when I was like, and it took me out of the book because I was like reading it and I was like enjoying it. But I was like, oh, nobody speaks like this. People don't speak like this to each other. This just isn't realistic. So it just really got under my skin. But I would still recommend it. It's a good read. It's a quick read, little novella. I did give it 3 stars. I'd probably give it like 3.5 stars to be honest. I would recommend it. So yeah. The next book I read in January, it was called The Actor's Alphabet by Julie Hesmond-Halg. Why do all these authors have difficult names? This is a non-fiction, I guess, actor's self-help book, you could say. I'm, as I said, obviously an actor, so I had this recommended to me by quite a few people I know in the industry, and I'm really glad I finally read it. I really enjoyed it. I thought Julie gives really good practical advice. You might recognise Julie, especially, I feel like if you're in the UK, you're going to recognise her. She was in Coronation Street most famously, but she was also in Broadchurch and like loads of other things. She's not like a big Hollywood A-lister, but I feel like she's a face that people would recognise, especially in the UK. And yeah, her tone in the book was just very down to earth, just very relatable. A lot of it was very validating as an actor, as a freelancer. I would highly recommend reading it if you are in that industry. Even if you're not an actor, maybe you're musical theatre or an artist or whatever, I would really recommend reading it because it is really practical advice and I got through it really, really quick. It's really easy and accessible to read and I gave it 5 stars. So the last book I read in January was honestly my favourite, and it is Now She Is Witch by Kirsty Logan. And I actually have a physical copy. The rest of these books I've read in my Kindles don't have copies, but here's the beautiful copy of Now She Is Witch by Kirsty Logan. I love this book, so let me just gush for a little minute. So in this book we follow Lux, our main character, and What I found really interesting in this book is we don't really get a setting as such. We know there's a north and a south, and at the beginning of the book, Lux is in the south, and there's all this fear about the north and how the north has witches, and you don't want to go to the north. It's like a scary place, whatever. But we don't know what it's north and south of. We don't know if it's England, Britain, America, some like Europe. Like we don't know. And I kind of like that ambiguity. I guess it kind of speaks to the fact that it could be anywhere. And it could be nowhere, and it could be a made up place, it might be a real place. We don't really know, but I kind of like that. It was just interesting that it didn't specify. But yeah, Lux is found in a very unfortunate situation at the beginning of this book because her mother has passed. She has come back from a sanctuary where she was sent because it was suspected that the devil was within her, and she was sent to the sanctuary to be cured. People in the village thought her mum was a witch, and so yeah, she was just sent away to the sanctuary. She comes back, her mother is no longer there, she's gone, and Lux is left to fend for herself. Luckily, right near the start of the book, we are introduced to this other mysterious character called Else. So it's just spelled Else. I was just reading it as Else. I suppose it could be Elsie, but I think, again, when you get further in the book, you kind of realise that it makes sense for it to be Else. So I'm pretty sure the name is Else. But yes, very, very mysterious character shows up at Lux's cottage in the woods, wearing, a cloak over her face, and she's just very mysterious, and we don't quite figure out what she really is until right near the end of the book, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, this book, theme-wise, obviously it's about witches, so surprise, surprise, female oppression, mass hysteria, all that good stuff. Witchcraft is also a theme. But I think there's also a theme of self-discovery in this book, taking your own power back, writing your own narrative, becoming your own person. Lux really goes on a journey in this book. She meets lots of different people, and she gets lots of different labels thrust upon her, some of which she accepts, some of which she doesn't. I think by the end of the book, there's this real sense of you get to write your own story. You don't have to subscribe to the labels that society tries to give you. You can forge your own path, and in doing so, you actually take your power back and become your own person. And I just loved it. This book is dark, it is gritty, I wouldn't say it's for the faint of heart, put it that way, but I just thought it was really, really powerful. I thought it was really well written. I thought it was really interestingly written. There's passages in this where we kind of hear Lux's backstory and her time in the sanctuary, and the way it's written is really interesting. There's probably a word for this, but there's like no punctuation. It's just like free form. It's almost like hearing someone's thoughts. Like if you were to hear, well, if you were to hear my thoughts anyway, they're not in order. It's not like nice structured sentences. We don't think like that. And it's all, so when we hear about Lux's backstory, it's almost like we're hearing her thoughts and memories, and it's kind of, yeah, there's no punctuation, there's no real structure, it's just bits, and yeah, it's really, really interesting way of writing it. I should have probably looked up what that would be called, but I found it really fascinating. I can kind of see how it might annoy certain people, but it's only for certain passages in the book, so I found it was fine, and I actually did quite enjoy it. It's just something so different. I'd say it's a really unique book, really different from pretty much anything I've read before. It kind of reminded me of Slowfoot by Brom. I definitely think this is my second witch lit book that I've read, and I definitely think this is a new favourite genre for me. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. I love it. So yeah, those were the 4 books I read in January. Please let me know if you've heard any of those books, what your thoughts were on them. I know a lot of people loved The Last Word, so I might just be being a hater on that, but yeah, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to follow me on TikTok, because I've been posting a lot more over there recently, and I'd love to see you over there and connect with you over there. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!